I'd like to welcome to the stage, you saw him already, the moderator for the next panel is Filip Dvorak from Filuta AI, and he'll be accompanied by Tomi from Cosmic Lounge, Maria from Flying Wild Hog, Ronnie from ClarityQ, Christoffer from Modl AI, and Nathan from Modulate. So, folks, come to the stage, please, and we'll kick things off. A round of applause for our final panel of the morning. Welcome back.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I think we have absolutely amazing line of topics, and we don't have that much time. So let's start discussing with an opening question that I hope gives everyone opportunity to direct their thoughts on the ideas that they find the most interesting. So if you would look ahead for next 5 years. We are conservative, only 5. Which 3 areas of game development do you believe will benefit the most from AI? And here by AI, I would say we have broad definition of AI. It's just advanced technology. Anything can be called AI these days. But we see that the advanced technology and especially generative AI has changed the market a little bit. So in next 5 years, 3 most significant AI technologies, and potentially if you see one direction in software engineering that has not yet been adopted by the game developers, what that one would be? Christoffer.
There we go. That's probably better. Well, 5 years is a very long time, so I don't think I necessarily know. But I think for me, obviously, behavioral systems in AI is going to have a huge impact on what we're going to see in terms of production, and the same we'll see from procedural content generation. I think a lot of that is already coming through in terms of how games are being made, and I think that will be super impactful on the production process. And we're just seeing the beginnings of that. But the third thing that I think a lot about, and that's less how AI fits into paradigms of how we're building games at the moment. I think that's starting to become well understood that it can have an impact there. I'm really interested in seeing how game design changes around the use of runtime generative AI and other AI methods. I think on that side, we're still waiting for someone to take a really left field approach to what you can do with AI in the game design context. And I come from the indie space myself originally, so I'd like to think that somebody there will come up with something mind-blowing and creative that we've never seen done with AI before. More pragmatically, software engineering practices. Well, Model AI, we do continuous testing. That's what we deliver to a lot of our customers with artificial intelligence. And that's something that I think that the game industry still has some ways to adopt. And that's chiefly due to the fact that you can't really test a full game without having a certain level of intelligence in there.
Found another mic, by the way, so you can. Whoever wants that. There we go. Yeah, thanks.
Yep. So I think NPC behavior is probably one of the most exciting areas that we're going to see a lot of these changes. I think at first it's going to start on the multiplayer side, but I think the Ghost Recons of the world and a lot of these single-player titles where you manage squads or towns or whatever it is, you're going to see a lot of innovation there specifically. Excited to see what happens in the QA space with turnaround time and things like that. And I think one of the other places, this is slightly adjacent to game development, but I would see a lot of the departments that are historically underserved or under-resourced within departments, whether it's QA, whether it's community, whether it's your moderation teams, the tools that are coming out to expand the reach and functionality of these teams is pretty incredible right now.
Cool. So Tomi Huttula from Cosmic Lounge, and what we do is casual puzzle games using our own technology, which has very different game architecture, and our designers can use no-code tools to come up with a lot of different game mechanics and use AI for that. So the question is like, in which areas there would be the biggest benefit? I would say that AI will be having a big impact on every single area of game development, but of course in some areas faster than others. But I also think that there's no area of game development where you still wouldn't need expert game creators. So a great artist can make much better art with AI than a not so good artists. Same thing with game design, same thing with development. To me, the most obvious areas for game development and benefiting from AI, one is analytics. Like AI will be able to find correlations that would be much harder for humans to find out. And how we, for example, approach that is that we sort of expose the rule book of the game to AI so that it can really make correlations that would be hard to otherwise detect. Then second area is content creation. So I think game developers sort of have been, have needed to think about, like, can we do this kind of game because it would be so content heavy we can't do it. It wouldn't make economical sense. And I think that's also changing with AI. You can think of new kind of game concepts because content creation, if you use AI the right way, it would not be such a bottleneck it has been. And then I think a third most obvious area would be personalization. So when you can create a lot of content and you can analyze, you can do. I think in one of the earlier speeches there was like you can do hyper personalization. Everybody could have their sort of own game because there's so many areas to personalize. So that's one thing. And then the last question was that what area companies should be using but are not doing.
If you see software engineering practice that is used in large software houses that is not used in the gaming industry yet.
Yeah, well, I think. Anything quality, like code quality related things, I think games industry would benefit a lot from using AI and other technologies for having better code, because usually games are sort of one-off things, so you don't really need to care how quality about so much, but I think that matters.
Yeah, hi guys. So I wouldn't be original. I would say behavior system of the NPCs, of course. I would love to see some improvement in the game design systems and also the coding. So possibly like faster and better detecting the bugs in the code. And moreover, since I'm a narrative designer and I'm a lecturer that actually teaches narrative design, I would love to incorporate the topic of the AI systems to teach people, to teach the designers how to wisely use this AI for our purposes and not to be afraid to use it, specifically in the narrative design.
Hi, I'm Ronnie. I'm the co-founder and CBO of ClarityQ, and we bring Gen AI to product analytics. And that goes with what Tomi just said, that we see a lot of advancements coming in the near future, that everybody will be able, with AI and Gen AI, to really be able to speak to their data and get insights, and not having so much heavy dependency on systems and scattered data and things of that sort. And in addition, with the rise of agentic AI, and it goes back to the things you said, games adapting dynamically to what's happening, to the storytelling, to the different difficulty of the user, and what exactly fits the user that's playing the game.
Thank you. So I think we had some strong drive towards changes in how non-player characters will behave in the games. I'm looking forward to it myself. We probably will be again evaluating the question when it's fun and when having an agent that is behaving optimal in some way is actually not fun and rather boring, and there is very interesting space in front of us. I would follow up with a question. When we look at procedural generation, it has been around for decades. We can think about old games that were already using procedural generation at certain level, and this level has been moving more towards empowering what we can do with procedural generation recently. And there has always been one of the largest challenges of procedural generation has been to setting up the right boundary between what we want to have creative control over to be able to guarantee that the game is fun to play, and what do we leave to the procedural generation. This is open, I would say, very, very open question. And I would like to ask, where do you see how far we can go with the automated generation, for example, with narrative generation, or can we even generate game mechanics? We can go in same order.
Well, I think, from my perspective, I think generative AI and some of the new content generation methods that are coming through, they enable to generate more content to deeper depth at larger scale, perhaps. Like you can generate more text and you get like longer examples. It'll be easier to get variety, things like that. We've seen talk, like the same thing goes for 3D content and other kinds of content as well, right? But the thing that doesn't go away, at least from a game design perspective to my mind, is that any generative system that you're working with is still an instrument or a tool, or it has certain properties that you need to understand. And if you're putting that at the core of your game design, and especially like if it's runtime at the core of your game design, so you're not using this necessarily to produce a lot of stuff and then configure it and then ship the game, it's actually part of your core mechanic. I don't think you get away from kind of like the fundamental challenge, which is understanding this generation system and making sure that you put it to good use for a good experience. It's just that now you probably have a wider array of places you can take the output of that system. So in many ways, you get a harder problem from, like all the way back to Elite, I think, where you had procedurally generated worlds, right? You have the same challenge, but now you have it in so many more dimensions. So that'd be my sort of like immediate reflection. It makes it harder from a design perspective in some ways, but also opens up new opportunities.
I think to build off that, holistically, if you look at AI and its capabilities right now, what it really does is give you the ability to add a scale to your games at a speed that you probably weren't able to previously do it. So when you talk about the problems that you want to solve, a few years ago we were graced with games like Baldur's Gate 3, incredible branching narratives and things like that. We also saw a tremendous number of indie studios pop onto the scene with really innovative games. I think what we're going to see is these indie studios coming to play with the ability to fill out quests in a way that they weren't previously able to, in a way to with the abilities to build worlds that they weren't previously able to do, while still maintaining these small, like 1 to 10 person studios. So I think that's something I'm really excited about. And I think that's...
All right, I'll continue from here. I think this gets to a fundamental question of can AI create or design games? And to me, it's about does AI know what is fun? Is AI able to tell if some new idea is a good idea or not? And generally, AI is pretty bad of doing that. So it can look at data, and it can sort of, like if somebody tells, this is how you measure good, AI would be doing fantastic work. So there's some sort of narrow or selected use cases. Like, for example, we use AI, our level designers use AI as one tool to generate levels. It really increases the efficiency, and they can try so many things. But because they are able to use the player data to set those metrics and sort of requirements of, like, it has to be in these lines or in this scope, and so that's a use case where AI can actually create stuff. But then technically we could have an AI model creating new puzzle game mechanics, but that's not the problem to solve, because the games industry is full of people with a lot of ideas. So the problem we try to solve is, like, how do we get those ideas out so that humans can play them and we know if they are fun. So AI is not there yet.
Yeah, actually, I totally agree. And this actually is a topic that brings the matter if AI is going to replace, for example, narrative designers or writers. I would dare to say that writers definitely not, because AI is not good yet at detecting and navigating through the emotions while writing the storylines and everything. However, I would love to see the advanced tool that would help me generate the narratives and detect problems sometimes logical problems when it comes to story flow and narrative flow. And that, I would believe, it will happen soon, even sooner than later. And I would definitely use it. And again, what I said before, I would love to teach about how use it wisely and offer it and make sure that the designers and the aspiring designers know how to use it wisely and support themselves.
I agree with everything you said. I think we should look at it in the short term and the long term. Right now, we see a lot of advancements and games are more personalized, but there's going to be a block sometime that, because AI, as you said, can't know emotions and what's fun and what's immersive. And it's going to be interesting if we have the abilities and if technology will bring abilities to understand the sentiment of the user and exactly what the user is feeling through voice detection and things like that, to see maybe then we can take it to the next level. But for now, we'll always need the man in the picture and to have humans in the loop, because it's not going to do it by itself. But in the future, who knows?
Thank you. So it seems that the general opinion is that we are not yet at a stage that we tell some AI, make me a game, and it's going to be there. It is going to have more steps. And for example, the narrative design has been one good use case for neurosymbolic reasoning. Symbolic reasoning that describes the world in logic and is able to create the logical narrative that after that is filled with a language model that just produces the glue that populates the logical sequence of actions that are happening. This has been showing pretty strong values. I think that maybe we can bring a few gallons of wine and talk about it later in the evening.
Definitely, count me in.
Let's move to next question. So, when we think about procedural generation, it is the capability to take some constraints and populate the rest of the world so those constraints are satisfied. Those constraints can be actually describing who is playing the game. It can be the personalized vector of the person that is engaging with the world, with the game itself. And as such, it helps to enable much stronger personalization. When the game is built around the person. This is a different angle on procedural generation. I have, for example, one recent title that caught my attention has been Wilder Myth. No connection, we are not investing in them, but it was just a really interesting game that has built on top of blocks that are represented by decisions of the player done during the game, and then the whole storyline develops as a comic book. And this comic book follows your characters that you play with. It follows up how they are aging. You start working and take as characters after your original characters die, their children, and it builds up again and again in a one long story. This was an amazing experience for me. And I would like to have this as an open question. If something recently impressed you with regard to a level of personalization, and if you have seen the Black Mirror episode, John is Awful, where the whole world is generated around you, and that's the level of generation where we would be able to completely generate your experience. It's a matrix level of generation. So the open question is, do you think that will happen soon? And what impressed you the most with regard to personalization recently? Christoffer.
All right. Well, I mean, will it happen anytime soon? I think we're still a ways away for that kind of like an experience where everything is entirely personalized. I think another question for me is whether you want to have a 100% personalized game, or if you would like to experience kind of like the intent of the game designer through the experience that you're having. So if you make the system entirely autonomously and fully personalized, if you have that kind of like narrative there, or sort of like that kind of like experience, who is the author? Is the author yourself? Is your experience being determined by some sort of like average of the collective unconscious? And will you be able to relate that to anyone else after that experience, right? So at least, and maybe, maybe I'm showing my age, but I've kind of like been raised with the notion that playing a game is also a conversation with somebody who wanted me to have a certain kind of experience. And so I wonder what that fully personalized experience looks like. And maybe it would be great, but I still like to see the human behind the game. But then maybe that would be represented in the system that generates the experience like we talked about before, right? And in terms of where that would come from, I think what we've seen recently with immediate frame generation from large models definitely has the potential. Like that's something that I found really impressive, and that I think points in that direction from a technological standpoint. But I think it's just still like very early days before we see that do something that's at a grade where you would be able to ship it as an experience.
That was a great answer. I think I agree with all of that, and I think there are probably some technological limitations that are going to result in this being years out, not any time in the next 6 months to a year. I think the other thing that we're going to see is probably twofold, right? One is going to be privacy discussions. How much data is this company allowed to collect about the individuals that are playing while it's generating the story around you? And then the headline grabbing AI hallucination part, right? So are there going to be instances where an NPC tells you to commit some act of self-harm, tell you you're, I don't know, insignificant or things like that? Is it going to teach you how to make explosives? These things are happening with OpenAI and some of these other companies. I think when and if it happens in gaming, it's going to be absolutely devastating to those companies. So these are a lot of the considerations that we need to think about before we go and try to build games that can sort of just create a narrative around a single person.
Right, so one example of using AI to create or personalize the world is there's a company called BitMagic that I've happened to know them. So in the game, it's like a third-person adventure game where you can just type in like, okay, do a castle and give me some related mission or something. And so it's pretty magical. But then I think in this personalization, there's the other end where I think that most of the personalization we see in games, the player doesn't even know that it's personalized. And of course, there's use cases already which has been there for a long time. Like you go to a free-to-play in-game shop, you see different products promoted based on your behavior and all that. So there's the monetization aspect, but then I think that where personalization will be used a lot is like how to make it's still the same game, but it just made more fun for you because the AI or the personalization algorithm knows that this player should try this feature right now. That would make the game less boring or more exciting. So I think that's I would say probably most of the personalization will be something you don't even know it's happening.
Yeah, that's true. That can be true. I would say that that may be a dream come true from the narrative perspectives when it comes to creating immersive, engaging experience. However, I would also think over the emotions that it's going to generate. As you said, like some NPCs talking to you or creating some storylines inside, it should be believable. And so far, I think when it comes to emotions, AI is not yet ready. So there's always should be like a person behind this to be emotionally involved in those storylines and be familiar with the structures and evoking those emotions. So that would be awesome if AI would understand those emotions and creating the relationships inside and actually meeting the requirements of our personal, spaces and our personal identities, right? When it comes to feeling the emotions.
As you mentioned at the beginning, you asked about Black Mirror. So I think and maybe we'll look at it in a year from now and we'll laugh at me and everything will be Black Mirror and everything is fully personalized, but I don't believe it will be. I think we still have a long way to go as we all look at it, and the emotions and everything. Again, it's going to improve over time. I don't think it will all be revolving around us, but just specific things, specific items according to the data we'll have about the users. But not everything will be that way, and I hope no one will follow me like Black Mirror. But it's going to be interesting, and regulation is going to be super important then. But we can worry about that then as well.
We had some great answers. I'm myself concerned about the moment when we start processing emotions in AI and what we'll get out of it. Since, for example, that was one of the largest worries in autonomous systems that were presented in movies like Terminators and sci-fi, where we have projected the emotions that people have into the AI, and at that moment it started behaving like us, which wasn't good for anyone in the process. These days AI is still very constrained. It doesn't have the limbic system. It doesn't manifest the emotions that in our cases are in the case of human race is built on a hormonal system that sends triggers into the brain and causes random subsets of the brain to out of the sudden focus on certain thoughts. And this hormonal machine has been built historically through evolution with completely different design focus. If we start creating those models of emotions with AI, I'm very interested in the results. And on the level of personalization, we have some of the organizations in the world, the large software houses like Google and Microsoft, they have the largest, most precise vectors that are defining you as a person, often better than you know yourself, because they use it to sell you vendor stuff. They are good at predicting what you are going to want. They have invested enormous amount of energy and resources to build really good personal vectors who you are. I wonder what happens if those vectors become available for personalization in games, because at that moment you can tailor the experience to levels that we haven't seen before. I'm also wondering when this happens and how it's going to look like. Let me follow up to next question. So, talking about the large software houses, and when we look at the advancement of software engineering, and I shouldn't identify one company, or let's say that among them, they have claimed that software testing will disappear, that AI in general software engineering is going to completely cover the testing necessities that are at the market at this moment. I wonder if it is the same in the game industry. And to be transparent, we are a company that is making agents that are doing automated testing of games, and so is Christoffer. So I think it's a good question to pass to Christoffer.
All right. Well, I can definitely start just from our perspective. I mean, I think we talked about that a little bit before, that in terms of like one software engineering practice that I think can still be integrated more into the way that we work in games is kind of like this continuous full loop testing, right? And I think that has just been really difficult for games, because games are meant to be operated at kind of like peak human intelligence in many cases, even either in terms of your reaction times or in terms of your reasoning and things like that. And they're very heterogeneous. I think games is probably, or I would venture, it's one of the kinds of software that has the greatest variety, not just in terms of like what you do inside of it, but also how it's made, because every game team will eventually kind of like put together their own thing, right? So in that way, I think, testing games end-to-end hasn't really been possible until we started having more generic AI methods that we could more easily, integrate up against those games to have them operated. So, initially obviously you can do things like unit testing, you can do testing at the code level, there's a lot of things that you can do automatically already, but kind of like really fundamentally answering the question, does the game work, requires it to be played. and observed in many different ways. It's a super complex question. And so I think, yes, we'll go in that direction eventually, right? But if you go and ask people in the industry, and you ask people, like, do you do automatic testing? Then I think the latest numbers we had, and this is from memory, but 70-something% would say, yes, we have automatic testing in our studio. And then you're like, okay, do you have like a CI pipeline and like all those different things? And then that number drops to like 30%. And then you, like, once you have those pipelines, you ask people, oh, okay, like, what are your strategies? And the number of game productions that will come up with more than 3 or 4, then you're down to like 15%. And so that just means that there's kind of like a lot of, there's a lot of opportunity for the industry to make their own lives easier by going in that direction. So that's definitely something that I would hope to see. And so I'll pass it on just a second. But I would say, if we can figure out those parts, then we can start automating the answer to the question of, like, does my game work? And I think that would set the human part of the production process, the human testers, free to spend more time answering, is it good, I suppose.
So I think it's that last part that's really important, right? The industry, over the past few years, things have been rough, especially, actually not especially, but we haven't learned a lot, I think. So if you look at, and sorry to call out AAAs, but if you look at AAA studios, like, we're still dealing with the crunch. We're still dealing with having to get games out at clips that are near impossible. And if you look at the advancements with automated QA, this helps speed up, right? Because they're not going to get rid of these deadlines because they're publicly traded companies. If you look at the automated QA, this allows them to get these products out at a higher quality on time, right? And I think if we're being positive, that saves a lot of jobs, which is a great thing. To your point, I still don't think the emotion, I still don't think a lot of the exploratory testing or the edge cases are things that AI at any point in the near future are going to be able to do. So I think what we'll see is a transition from the standard test case execution or things like that to looking for exploits for emotional testing, as you mentioned, a lot of the exploratory testing and things like that over time. So I don't think the human goes away. I don't think the industry changes that fundamentally. I just think it evolves a little bit and shifts where it's testing.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say on the testing side, but I think it's an interesting area, especially like QA, quality assurances, that I think every game company would be happy the less time they need to spend on that side. So I think AI will be very welcome for solving any problems on that area.
And I will be boring because I would get back to emotions right now. However, it's a very valid, important, and interesting question. And I would say that when it comes to story and narrative in general perspective, it's hard to check it like 0-1. So there's no yes and no direct answers. You cannot say that story works and story doesn't work, because for some people it will be working and for some people it won't, because there will be lacking some emotions or some relationships or some other human factors. So I would say that it's very helpful when it comes to detecting bugs and problems, like logical problems in the storyline. However, I think checking the immersion and engagement in the story, it would be very hard for an AI to do it, because it's like a human factor, I guess.
I agree with everything you said, and with emotions and everything like that. I think we're going to see additional type of QA, because now we need to QA our AI agents, and we need to see what our AI agent does. And so in addition to the regular QA we're going to have for games, we'll have the QA for emotions or whatever it is from humans that will look at it, but we'll also have real new QA that we'll need to do here as well. New types of bugs.
Can I add something about the tool that actually reads emotions? reads is like I know it's too far-fetched maybe, but I use a lot those generated text-to-speeches when it comes to generating voiceovers, just to test, the dialogue lines throughout the level before we get to the proper, recording sessions with the talents. And actually, these times, those generated lines, those text-to-speeches tools are incredible, and they actually can generate and evoke different emotions when it comes to tone, when it comes to shouting, not shouting, speaking in different with different emotions. Actually, it's only a matter of how you write it and how many exclamation marks, let's say, you add at the end, for example. However, it's good, it's pretty good, and you can read it well. It's not like Ivona in 20 years ago, and this is something I would say that it reads emotions somehow when it comes to good coding. Yeah.
We had some great answers. I agree with Ronnie that we have completely new environment in front of us. When the AI models start generating more and more content, we will have to come up with fundamentally different methods for testing it, because the traditional methods will start breaking up. The agents will need to be more autonomous, more independent. And Maria, I also agree that the emotional testing is probably something that we will not give away to AI anytime soon. That's the player experience, and the emotional feedback is I don't know how to test it at this moment myself. And Christoffer, I agree with your point of view. Gaming is more specific field than general software engineering. We are in some transition, and something will be automated. Something will take us more time. I have one last question. We are on the edge with time. This is, I would say, a quick question. When we look at what all the agencies in the world are saying about contribution of AI, it will save on average dozens of % of the operations costs across all industries in the world, which will free up lots of free time to people who will have that free time to use it in some way. And since gaming is the largest industry in entertainment, I would expect it that people will start playing more games in more creative ways, and that the industry is going to grow significantly. I would like to ask if you agree with this point of view, or if you see some competition in the entertainment and you think there is something else that people will do instead of playing games that will become the major consumer of the free time that has been provided by the cost savings. Christoffer.
Sure, I'll be brief. Well, I think historically there's always been a notion that automation would give us more free time, but we're still waiting for that to come through, unfortunately. But if it does, it's definitely going to be games.
I'm a bit of a contrarian here, I guess, but I think it'll start with games, and it will end with people actually going outside and picking up sports and trades and things like that. I think we see that. I know in the US right now there's a sport called pickleball that's become very popular. So I think we're constantly being force-fed media and entertainment and things like that, and I think we're at an inflection point where we're actually starting to see humans push against that and try to be human a little more. But I do think gaming of the things within the digital space will be the biggest beneficiary.
Yeah, I'm sort of turning a little bit the question. I don't think the people will have more time, and why I'm saying that is that in game teams, now that they are using more efficient tools with AI, I think instead of them spending less time creating games, they will be using the same time of creating games, but they will be just doing better games or more games and using the time, with better tools. And probably same thing will happen for all the other people. So we'll just be able to do better stuff, but I don't think the time will be. There will be more free time available, unfortunately.
I want to keep my job, so I would say games, definitely. I agree.
I'd love to think like Nathan, that everybody's going to go hanging out and doing sports. I would love that, but I'm guessing that we have a few options. Gaming is great for us and for everyone here. Also, I'd say social networks, if we have more time, social networks, and VR, AR, and streaming, adaptive streaming we might see. But like Tomi, I wish I'd see some more time. That's the only thing we're missing right now.
Thank you, everyone. It seems that we are in the best industry we can be in. And I, of course, also love Nathan's vision that we will spend more time doing sports and social interactions.
It's very ideal.
And thank you for coming. I think this was a great discussion, and we are around. Talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you.